doing?
Very good. How are you?
Are you guys getting fuel tank clear?
We are indeed.
Oh, he told me it was at the end of the dock.
Well,
This is better. I'm Alex.
Alex.
Nice meeting you. My
Gary.
father is coming here in just a second.
Okay.
Yeah, let me go grab him.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Very good.
All right, Carl.
Okay, Carl.
Yeah, that's Alex.
Right
Just a
next to
single
you.
tank, was it 175?
Yes.
Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this gauge off. Unfortunately, it's not a sending unit. I have sockets for this. They're up in the trailer. So we're going to go through here because all your pickup tubes and everything are right here. This is going to be the only access I really have. My probe's right down at the bottom. We're going to vacuum any water or debris that's going to be on the bottom. And then what it's going to do is going to bring fuel, water, and debris up to 2 stages of filtration on the cart outside on the dock. And down to 1 micron, it's going to trap any water in those canisters. It's going to take the clean fuel, put it right back in the tank about 40-50 psi, and we're using that return pressure to create a flush inside the tank. Okay. So what that's going to do is disturb any material that's on the bottom of the tank or anything that's in the tank by the fuel, so it can get carried out through the fuel, get caught in the filters, and basically go back.
You don't actually go in with a brusher or anything like that.
Yeah, we're just going to be using, basically it's like vacuuming and pressure washing at the same time. Okay. Yeah, so that flush and that agitation is what's causing, because we've got baffle walls inside.
Oh yeah.
So we're going to have to use that return fuel to create that flush.
So if you don't dislodge it at 75 psi, we're not going to dislodge it.
This is basically the only way to clean fuel tanks. That's the best way. You get some guys that just circulate your fuel, but without agitating the bottom of the tank and creating that flush, that's really what's getting any debris out of your tank. You know. So, and then also I have fuel line connections, so we'll follow that up to your RayCor. We're going to take that incoming line off, and I'm going to put a big draw on that with my pickup line. I have a sight glass, so we'll be able to see if you have any obstructions or anything that's in your fuel line. It's going to clear that right out.
Fuel polishing is really some of what effective in terms of cleaning up sludgy fuel, but really what's bothering you, really the kind of thing that'll shut you down out in waves, is the stuff that's in the bottom of the tank. That's water, microbial growth, sludge, other debris. We see all sorts of things like degraded seals, surface port gaskets, and that sort of thing that go into the bottom of the tank. And then particularly when the fuel tank gets low or you're just in rough water, this stuff stirs up from the bottom, becomes suspended in the fuel supply, and then of course it makes its way to the fuel pickup and shuts you down.
Pretty big nuts on these things. That's still good. We'll set this over here out of the way.
Can you actually feel the scum on the bottom?
It feels a little soft, but not as bad as some of them I run into. So I'm pushing this, I'm trying to snake this way a little bit, and I just felt a baffle hole, which is what I'm trying to go through. This is our return. So this is where the 40-50 psi of clean fuel is going to get returned into the tank. And we're going to direct this spray, this flow, and we're going to direct at different angles to try to loosen up any debris in there. We tie this off just so, because it's quite a bit of pressure, we don't want to make a mess. So this is our pickup tube here. This is what I'm going to be vacuuming with. So here's my sight glass. We're going to, I built this little clear tube. So you'll see in a second when we turn it on, and it's going to see fuel, water, and debris. Anything coming up through that pickup tube is going to get caught. Now we're going to safety tie this just so try to minimize any potential leaks. We've got a safety switch here. This is why I can turn the machine off and on. If we see a leak or something, we gotta stop the machine. Okay, turn it on. There you go. So we're gonna see that debris coming up through there. It's gonna take a second to prime up. There you go. So I'm gonna start fishing this around, and we're gonna be after all these little specks of stuff coming up. Yeah, now the machine just caught prime, so now it's going to start really flushing.
So something that's really important People ask us all the time, what additives should I put in my fuel tank? And most of the time we say, the only thing you should put in the fuel tank is diesel. Unless you have a microbial growth issue, then something like a biofuels or a bio-oil is a really good product to use. But the one thing you really want to try to avoid is putting the dispersant chemical in the tank. It's going to pick up any free water that's laying in the bottom of the fuel tank and distributing that through the body of the fuel. Because even absorbed water in the fuel supply is very damaging to the diesel and fuel injectors. That's the number one thing that mechanics complain about is wet fuel, meaning water absorbed fuel or water getting in the fuel line and then trying to run them over. It's very damaging. The best thing to do if you have water in your fuel tank is mechanically get the water out of the tank. Try to resist going to the marine product stores and buying a solution in a bottle because it's probably not going to work.
So road diesel is just as good as marine diesel for the
And we see a mix. Mostly we see red diesel, but we see a mix of folks that have a boat at a dock and they'll just bring jerry cans full of on-road diesel to the boat top line. Now we're going to pull out this pre-filter here and actually cut it open so we can see the type of contamination that you have there. We try not to waste much diesel. Obviously diesel's not free, but there is a little bit of fuel loss that happens when you're doing a fuel job. Now this is a new filter when we started here. Yeah, so there's some junk in there for sure. A little piece of coating to a piece of wire, and we see all sorts of different things come out of the tank, but I'd call this really moderate contamination. We see that much heavier in other jobs, and other jobs lighter as well. This is kind of in the moderate zone.
Hard to see that coming through the sight glasses. It starts those little specks come by so fast.
Fuel tanks in boats notoriously have terrible access. About 20% of the manufacturers actually do a pretty good job of it. Even some manufacturers, though, that did not do a good job of fuel tank access in the past have improved over the years. But still, about 8 out of 10 boats, the access to the inside of fuel tank to do our kind of work is difficult. Sometimes we have to actually modify the tanks so they can be cleaned and cleaned properly. So when we do that, whether it's a stainless tank, black iron tank, or an aluminum tank, we use these products from Seabill. This is a company out in Washington State. We've been using these products since about 2009, I think, is when we first installed them. We've put in hundreds at this point. It's a double gasketed system that is assembled with a split ring inside the fuel tank. This ring actually splits. You can fold it in half. It goes inside the hole that you drill in the tank, and then you pull the bolts pattern through the hole after you drill the holes on the periphery of the 4-inch hole saw hole that you're making the tank, and then you have a gasket and faceplate on the outside. But what it does is it allows you to make reusable access to a fuel tank so that they can be properly cleaned and cleaned again in the future. We use a vacuum just like the filter on your boat. You may have a vacuum gauge on your filter. We use a vacuum here to tell when our filters are loaded up. And we also have a return pressure gauge, which tells us how much return pressure is going inside the tank. So what we do is we use the gauges and to tell when we need to change the filters, but as far as being inside the fuel tank goes, we have a suction line, which is a large diameter suction. And you need that because if there's any debris in there, particularly like pieces of gasketing or whatever that are falling in there, you want to be able to make sure you get it out of the fuel tank.
And it's going to be drawing fuel from your pickup tube and clear your pickup line all the way to your RayCor. Typically when we plug that in to this pickup tube, you'll see little small bits of debris that's got caught up in the fuel line. We can also see the fuel stream coming through and make sure it's got no obstructions. Sure. A lot of times we plug that in and we see all kinds of stuff coming through there.
With marine fuel tank work, particularly on smaller tanks, even though your boat has a larger tank because it's a motor sailor, a lot of our customers have really small tanks that are 10, 20, 30, or 40 gallons. But the size of the machine, the amount of horsepower you bring to the job is important too. This particular machine is a relatively low flow machine. It runs at 10 gallons a minute. You might say, geez, that's not very fast. But the reality is, if you're trying to physically separate water from fuel, you
have separated water at the bottom of your fuel tank, as it passes through your filtration, you got to allow to have the right speed to have that water fall out and not get jammed through there because it's a high-speed pump. So there are some reasons why you use a pump that goes 10 gallons per minute to do this type of work.
Plug our adapter in, and we're going to pull fuel from the fuel tank through this fuel line. Make sure there's no obstructions in that line. Alright, so you can see there was a piece of junk that just came through there. I don't know if you can see that on camera. It's going to take a second. You can see the fuel flow going. But the first initial, when I first hook it up, usually pulls some debris through. So it's going to take a second to prime the pump because we're working through a 3/8 fuel line here, so it's been aired out. But this will start pulling real quick here in a second, and that's going to put a large vacuum. And this is what we're just making sure there's no obstructions in the fuel line and that you get good flow, unrestricted flow. You guys got more than enough fuel flow here. This is just another way to access the fuel tank. Occasionally, if you got a lot of elbows and adapters, or people splice fuel lines together, you'll get catch points and bottlenecks where stuff can get clogged up. You know, if you've got stuff like microbial growth or gasket material in your fuel tank, they'll get picked up in your fuel line and get clogged. So you guys got real good fuel flow. So that's all we need to do. We'll hook it back up.